Before Mayweather's defense, before Pacquiao's speed, there was Roy Jones Jr., a man who didn't just box. He defied logic. He moved like light, punched like thunder, and dared opponents to hit what they couldn't even see. For nearly a decade, Roy wasn't just the best. He was untouchable, a blur in the ring, a symphony of reflex, rhythm, and rage. He danced, he taunted, he humiliated champions, and then he fell hard. From the peak of Olympic injustice to the pinnacle of four-weight glory, and then the endless twilight of too many fights. This is the story of Roy Jones Jr., the most gifted fighter of his generation, the man who broke all the rules and paid the price for staying too long. He didn't just change boxing, he became its biggest what if. And today, we ask, was he the greatest fighter? Who stayed just one fight too many? Before we start, subscribe the channel to support our growth. Thank you. Before Roy Jones Jr. danced under bright lights and fought with his hands behind his back, he was just a boy growing up in the humid, suffocating heat of Pensacola, Florida. A boy forged not by play, but by pressure. Not raised, trained, not loved, molded. Born on January 16, 1969, Roy Jr. entered a household run by a man more drill sergeant than dad. His father, Roy Jones Sr., was a Vietnam War veteran and former professional boxer himself. The backyard wasn't a playground. It was a training camp, built with cinder blocks and sweat. The family gym became Roy Jr.'s childhood. By the time most kids were learning how to ride a bike, Roy was already learning how to bob and weave. Jones Sr. believed in discipline, absolute, ruthless, non-negotiable. He pushed his son through military-style drills, forced him to spar with grown men, and made sure weakness was punished, not corrected. There was no room for softness. Crying was weakness. Losing was unacceptable. Excuses weren't even acknowledged. And yet, under all that pain, something extraordinary happened. Roy didn't crumble. He thrived. The torment became fuel. The strictness became focus. And the trauma? That became timing. Roy developed not just athletic gifts, but survival instincts. Reflexes so fast, reactions so sharp, they bordered on supernatural. Every beatdown became data, every punishment, programming. By the time he was a teenager, Jones was already a phenom on the amateur boxing scene. Speed no one could match. Movement that felt like watching water in human form. He could dodge 5 punches before throwing one, and that one would land flush. He wasn't just good, he was scary. Then came the Olympics. In 1988, 19-year-old Roy made the U.S. Olympic team and headed to Seoul. He didn't just dominate, he embarrassed his competition, outlanding opponents by double, sometimes triple, their output. It all led to the final bout, Roy Jones Jr. versus Park Sae-hun of South Korea. Roy beat him badly, cleanly, clearly. He landed 86 punches to Park's 32. Park even apologized afterward. And yet, the judges awarded the gold to Park. It was the most blatant robbery in Olympic boxing history. The world was outraged. Reporters, athletes, even officials condemned the decision. Roy Jones Jr. received the Val Barker Trophy, awarded to the tournament's best fighter. Even though he technically didn't win gold, the symbolism was crystal clear. Everyone knew who the real champion was. But Roy didn't walk away with bitterness. He walked away with a vow. Never again would someone else decide his fate. From that moment forward, he wouldn't leave victory to the judges. He would dominate so completely, no one could take it from him. When Roy Jones Jr. turned professional in 1989, he didn't waste time with slow build-ups or feel-out fights. From the start, he was hunting, not for wins, for annihilation. Each fight was a statement. Each opponent was just another name on a growing list of people who couldn't touch him. His hands moved too fast for the eye to follow. Commentators would gasp mid-broadcast. Slow-motion replays were the only way to understand what had just happened. He didn't fight by the book. He rewrote it. Hands low, chin out, dancing, taunting, leaping in with punches from impossible angles. Coaches warned against it. Roy made it look easy, and the early numbers backed it up. Knockout after knockout, crowd after crowd on its feet. Promoters realized they had something rare, a showman with substance. A fighter who didn't just win, but humiliated world-class opponents while doing it. But Roy wanted more than hype. In 1993, just 4 years into his pro career, he stepped into the ring with Bernard Hopkins for the vacant IBF middleweight middleweight title. Hopkins, gritty, technical, relentless, was expected to test Roy like never before. Instead, he was outboxed for 12 straight rounds. Hopkins landed punches in single digits. Roy didn't take risks. He didn't need to. He controlled the pace with one hand, literally. He later revealed he fought with a broken right hand for most of the bout. Roy Jones Jr. was now a world champion, but he wasn't finished. He immediately moved up to super middleweight and destroyed James Toney in 1994, a fighter many believed was the best pound-for-pound in the world at the time. Toney was slick, confident, undefeated, and Roy made him look like an amateur. After that, the boxing world couldn't deny him anymore. Analysts started using words like alien, freak, once in a century, and Roy embraced it. In interviews, he'd smile and say, "Y'all must have forgot." Not cocky, factual. Because every time people thought he couldn't keep dominating, he'd show them something new. He wasn't just the best fighter in the world, he was making greatness look boring. By the late 1990s, Roy Jones Jr. ruled the light heavyweight division like a monarch. He didn't just beat opponents, he puzzled them. He turned seasoned veterans into confused rookies. Nobody could touch him, and everyone knew it. He moved up to 175 pounds and cleaned house, knocking out contenders and champions with terrifying ease. Vinny Pazienza said before their fight, "I've never trained this hard." Afterward, he said, "I couldn't hit him. I couldn't even see him." In 1996, Roy fought Murky Sosa. A fight stopped not because Sosa was hurt, but because both men were landing so cleanly that the referee assumed something was wrong with the other guy's defense. It was surreal. Roy's reflexes made professional judges question the fight's reality. Then came the Virgil Hill body shot in 1998, a punch so brutal, so perfectly placed to the ribs that Hill collapsed seconds later. Replay after replay played on highlight reels for years, not just because it ended the fight, but because it was surgical. By 1999, Roy was the unified WBC, WBA, and IBF light heavyweight champion. He had cleaned out an entire generation of fighters. There was no one left. Fans were tuning in just to see what he would do next. Not if he'd win, but how dramatically. And yet, the praise felt hollow, because dominance comes with a cost. Roy's greatness became his greatest enemy. Top fighters didn't want to face him. There was no reward in being embarrassed on global television. His pay-per-view numbers lagged. Casual fans wanted drama. Roy gave them execution. His mastery was too smooth, too efficient. Some critics said he's too careful. Others said he hasn't been tested. But those criticisms came not from Roy's weakness, but from his perfection. He made boxing look too easy. And still, Roy didn't stop. He created his own music label, made rap albums, walked into pressers in fur coats and shades. He was a character now, a brand. But behind the charisma, the hunger still burned. He wasn't satisfied just being the best light heavyweight. He wanted something impossible, the heavyweight crown. Everyone said it was suicide. He was a former middleweight, going up against giants. But Roy didn't blink. Because when you've spent your whole life making the impossible look easy, why stop now? In 2003, Roy Jones Jr. made a decision that stunned the boxing world. He wasn't content with ruling one division. He wanted history. He wanted the impossible. He wanted the heavyweight crown. No fighter in over 100 years had made the leap from middleweight, where Roy began his career, to heavyweight and won a world title. Not Duran, not Sugar Ray Leonard, not even Ali. But Roy wasn't concerned with what history said couldn't be done. He was obsessed with what he believed he could do. He bulked up to face John Ruiz, the WBA heavyweight champion. Ruiz wasn't flashy, but he was big, powerful, an awkward brawler who had taken punishment and kept coming. At 6 feet 2 inches and nearly 230 pounds, he was a mountain compared to the 193-pound Roy. And yet, from the opening bell, Roy Jones Jr. looked like he belonged. He didn't just beat Ruiz, he danced around him, outclassed him, humiliated him. He used movement, speed, and angles like he was still fighting at light heavyweight. Ruiz swung at ghosts. Roy landed clean, flashy combinations and pivoted away before the counters could even load. 12 rounds later, it was unanimous. Roy Jones Jr., the boy from Pensacola, the fighter who'd been robbed in soul, the untouchable king at 160, 168, and 175, was now the WBA heavyweight champion of the world. It should have been his last fight, his final act. a perfect ending. But Roy made a mistake. Instead of retiring on top, he dropped back down to light heavyweight, almost 25 pounds, to face Antonio Tarver. It was a move almost no experts believed he could recover from physically. Muscle loss, reflex timing, punch resistance, all at risk. But Roy, he said, "I'll prove you wrong." He did win the first Tarver fight, barely, in a close majority decision. But something was off. The speed wasn't the same. His movements looked forced. The invincibility had cracks. Still, Roy insisted, "I'm still me." May 15th, 2004, the night the myth died. Antonio Tarver stepped into the ring for a rematch no one expected him to win. He was supposed to be another name, another check, but something felt different. In the pre-fight stare-down, Tarver leaned in and said the now infamous line, "You got any excuses tonight, Roy?" Round 2, one punch, a looping left hook that landed flush. And just like that, Roy Jones Jr., the man who made world-class fighters miss entire combinations, was laid flat. No defense, no movement, just silence. It was the first time in his career he had been knocked out. The boxing world didn't cheer, it gasped. For years, fans wondered what would happen if someone could actually hit Roy. Now they knew, and it wasn't just the loss. It was how fragile Roy suddenly looked, vulnerable, slowed, human. But pride is a stubborn thing. Instead of stepping back, Roy took a third fight with Tarver. This time, no excuses, no controversy. Tarver dominated. Roy looked hesitant. He wouldn't pull the trigger. He fought like a man afraid of what would happen if he missed again. Then came Glenn Johnson, a journeyman, a grinder, someone Roy would have embarrassed in his prime. Instead, Johnson hunted him down, landed flush shots, and in round 9, knocked Roy out cold. Again, in just 16 months, the man once called Superman was now 0-3, with back-to-back knockouts. Critics turned, fans doubted. Commentators wondered aloud if Roy was finished. And the worst part? He didn't disappear. He didn't retire. He kept fighting. But now, it wasn't about dominance. It was about survival. In the years that followed, Roy Jones Jr. became a walking contradiction, a legend chasing shadows. He fought on, determined to prove that his decline wasn't permanent, that the greatness was still there, just buried, just waiting, and at times, it showed. In 2006, he won a couple of comeback fights, beat Prince Badi Ajamu, then Anthony Hanshaw, then Felix Trinidad, a faded but respected name. Roy looked better, sharper. The rhythm returned. Brief flashes of the old wizardry sparked. Fans started hoping again, but it wasn't real. Not fully, because every time Roy climbed back into relevance, someone pulled him back down. Joe Calzaghe beat him convincingly in 2008. Danny Green knocked him out in one round in 2009. Denis Lebedev finished him in Russia. The body was breaking down, the timing gone. The reflexes, once his shield, now betrayed him. Still, Roy refused to walk away. He fought in Poland, in Russia, on undercards and in forgotten venues. It became sad. Fans watched with conflicted hearts, loving the fighter, hating the decline. And yet, Roy kept going, because for him, boxing wasn't just a sport, it was identity, it was salvation. It was the one place he had always been in control. And letting go of that meant letting go of who he was. His fights weren't about titles anymore. They were about dignity, about chasing the feeling of invincibility one more time. The man who once made opponents look like amateurs was now a gatekeeper, still dangerous, still proud, but not the king anymore. As Roy's relevance faded in America, something unexpected happened. The rest of the world embraced him. While critics at home fixated on the knockouts and the should-have-retired conversations, fans overseas saw something different. A warrior still willing to fight. Russia, Poland, Latvia, Germany. Roy became a global nomad. He fought in packed arenas across Eastern Europe, his name still drawing massive crowds. In Russia especially, he became beloved, not just for his past glory, but for showing up when others wouldn't. He didn't mail it in either, even in his late 40s. Roy trained hard. He stayed sharp. His speed, though dulled, was still faster than most. And when he fought fans in these countries, they cheered not because they expected dominance, but because they admired his refusal to quit. In 2015, Roy made headlines again, this time not for a fight, but for citizenship. He was granted Russian nationality by President Vladimir Putin after expressing a desire to live and work in Russia more freely. The move drew media coverage, political commentary, even criticism. But for Roy, it wasn't about politics. It was about respect. In Russia, people still called him champion. they still remembered the highlight reels. In America, he was often treated like a fallen hero. In Russia, he was royalty. He continued training fighters there, making appearances, even dabbling in commentary. His influence spanned generations, from Eastern European amateurs to aging veterans who had once idolized him. He wasn't just Roy Jones Jr., the boxer, anymore. He was Roy Jones Jr., the ambassador. When the pandemic swept across the globe in 2020, boxing, like every other sport, paused. But then came a strange resurgence. Legends returned. Exhibition matches became the new novelty. And once again, Roy Jones Jr. was called to the spotlight. The opponent? Mike Tyson? Yes, that Mike Tyson, the youngest heavyweight champion in history, the destroyer of men. Both were well past their prime, but when the fight was announced, the world took notice. It was bizarre, intriguing, emotional. Tyson hadn't fought in 15 years. Roy was 51, and yet the hype was real. Millions tuned in, not for violence, but for nostalgia. To see two warriors, once kings, now circling each other one last time, and when they entered the ring in November 2020, it wasn't sad, it wasn't a joke, it was respectful, poetic. Tyson looked terrifying, even restrained. Roy, while slower, still flashed glimpses, angles, pivots, head movement. The bout was declared a draw, unofficially, but the score didn't matter. It wasn't about winning, it was about closure. For Roy, it was one last moment in the light, one final time where the whole world watched him move, duck, jab, and smile. He had been searching for that feeling since 2004. For years, he chased it in silence, on obscure cards, in forgotten venues. But here, in an empty arena, broadcast globally, he found it again. Respect, validation, legacy. For a night, Roy was Roy again. Today, when people talk about Roy Jones Jr., the conversation splits. Some remember the prime, the blur of limbs, the no-look punches, the dominance so complete it made the sport feel unfair. Others remember the decline, the knockouts, the endless returns, the sad undercards. But both sides are true. Because Roy Jones Jr. lived what most fighters only dream of, and then refused to let it go. He was the most talented boxer of his generation, maybe the most talented of all time. His reflexes, creativity, and speed redefined what a fighter could be. He was a walking highlight reel, with a chin never tested until it was too late. His peak, untouchable, but his downfall, inevitable. Because Roy wasn't just chasing victory, he was chasing perfection. He didn't want to be great, he wanted to be remembered as the greatest ever. And when that slipped away, he fought harder, longer, deeper into the twilight than he ever should have. And yet, who are we to tell a man when to stop doing the thing he loves most? Roy's story is a cautionary tale, but it's also a triumph. A boy abused into greatness, a fighter robbed of Olympic gold, a champion across 4 weight classes, a heavyweight history maker, a man who never said no to a challenge, even when it cost him. Today, he trains fighters, he mentors youth, he reflects, and maybe, just maybe, he's found peace. Because Roy didn't need to be perfect, he just needed the world to remember, and they always will. Roy Jones Jr. didn't just fight opponents, he fought expectations, he fought ghosts, he fought the myth of invincibility he built with his own 2 hands. He showed us the heights a human being can reach when talent, obsession, and pain collide. He made boxing look beautiful, and then showed us how ugly it gets when the magic fades. He never gave us a clean ending, no perfect retirement, no victory lap, just a slow, stubborn descent. One jab, one knockout, one comeback at a time. Because to Roy, walking away meant dying. And for a fighter like him, silence was louder than any bell. But here's the thing, Roy Jones Jr. didn't need a storybook finish. Because the middle chapters, they were unforgettable. The swagger, the speed, the brilliance. For nearly a decade, he wasn't just the best, he was a different species. He didn't just win, he dared. And long after the last punch was thrown, long after the critics stopped debating, one truth still echoes. There was nobody like Roy, and there never will be again.